Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Estonia once again, and we're also going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their bigger, stronger and more malty beers, and also for using some very interesting adjuncts in their beers as well. But these guys are potentially the best known Estonian craft brewery throughout the world, and with good reason, because their beers are pretty damn good in my experience. Now, the one we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from them once or twice before. This one has a little bit of a different twist to it compared to those other examples though, and it just kind of caught my eye because of how unusual it was actually, and because I know the brewery is good. So always cool to review some Estonian beer for you on the channel. Hopefully this is as good as the other beers I've had from this brewery. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Tallinn, the Estonian capital in the northwest of the country. We're going to go to the Noblessner area in the north of the city, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Põhjala Pruulikoda, which in English means Northern Realm Brewery. So this particular beer is simply called Plum Barleywine. It comes in at 12% ABV, and I think from the name you can guess what this beer is. But this is another member of their Cellar series, which is great, and I do recommend that you check it out. But quite nice to find that the Põhjala beers are very easy to get a hold of here, or relatively easy to get a hold of here in Hong Kong. So that was certainly a nice surprise. This is yet another one that I picked up from Angry Beer in Mongkok. And he's always got a good selection of random things from across Europe, as well as a number of very good Belgian beers. So definitely go there and check it out if you find yourself in Hong Kong. I'll try to remember to put the link to their Facebook or Instagram page in the video description for you below. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Põhjala Pruulikoda before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Estonian playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go into my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Põhjala once again. So, Põhjala, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Tallinn, the Estonian capital, and the company was founded by Peter Keek, N. Parl and Green Nurmits, and they were joined in the very early stages by Tiit Pananen as well. So the group actually went on a fact-finding trip to Brewdog in Scotland after Punk IPA reached Estonia. You know, they loved this beer and it was a little bit of a revelation for them, and you know, they wanted to do this themselves. But it was there that two of the founders who were interning at Brewdog encountered a guy called Chris Pilkington, and he went on to join them as their head brewer and is now a partner in the company. But Chris had actually graduated in marketing, but he was also an avid home brewer, and apparently he was producing some very interesting beers on the Brewdog pilot kit, and it was this that inspired the Estonian guys to ask him to join them on their venture in Tallinn. So the company was officially founded in 2012, and then from 2013 they began to gypsy brew at another few breweries around Tallinn. So they opened their first brewery in May of 2014 in the Nõmme district in the south of the city, and they had an initial capacity of 12 hectolitres here, but this was scaled up considerably over the years. But they started exporting their beer in 2015, and as a result of this, they're widely known throughout Europe and further afield. At this site, they had a tap list of 24 different beers, but that was all about to change soon after that. One of the things you will realise with beer from the Baltic countries is that it does get out there quite a little bit actually, and the main reason for that is just that these breweries are, you know, fairly decent in size, but the populations of these countries are pretty small actually. You know, Estonia is only 1.3 million people, and so I think they keep about a third of their product domestically, and then the other 2/3 can get exported across the EU. So it's quite a good business model for these guys, and that's the reason why a number of Estonian breweries are well known. The same in Latvia, because their population's only about 2 million, if I remember correctly. But anyway, later on in 2018, they moved to a new brewery in the Noblessner shipyard in northern Tallinn, and this brewery has a 50 hectolitre brew house, I think it's a Rolek if I remember correctly, and an even bigger tap room with a restaurant that serves American barbecue. I think they have opened up a bakery very recently as well, because the chef, his wife was a pastry chef, and so they're doing a lot more desserts and things like that now as well, which are very nice. But you know, over the years, like I said, this brewery became very well known throughout Europe for their big, more malty beers, and also for putting some really interesting adjuncts in their beers. That was one of Chris Pilkington's kind of traits as a brewer, if you like. But yeah, they do some really nice conventional beers as well. I've had some really good IPAs from them. They do a very nice lager as well, and yeah, they also have a really interesting barrel series as well, of which this is a member, of course. But yeah, as of April 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will, pardon me, no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. If you do want to have a little look at what the brewery looks like and watch an out and about video there, then I'll put the link to that in the video description below. And I also filmed a Meet the Brewery segment with N. Parrell and Chris Pilkington as well, which was really cool. So you can check those out if you type in Põhjala or Estonia in at the channel homepage. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Põhjala Pruulikoda for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at this beer itself. I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. There you can see the nice plums sitting there on the label. As we said earlier, this one is simply called Plum Barleywine, and it comes in at 12% ABV. This one has a yellow wax top on it, as you can see, and I've cut a little line around that so it's easier to open for the video. But yeah, this one is made using Mirabelle plums, which apparently come from the Lorraine region in northeastern France. They're kind of yellow, pretty much like the colour on there. Usually in Scotland, our plums are more purple rather than anything else. I don't know about over the rest of Europe. But yeah, plums for me tend to be more purple. The Japanese ume plums are kind of this colour too. But yeah, I think this could be a really interesting beer. And you know, I had a really interesting plum sour from Japan recently, and that was one of the main reasons that this one caught my eye. So let's just see if we can get this open. And it's opened quite nicely, which is always good with these wax tops. Some of them are a pain in the arse. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we go. Not too much in the way of smoke coming out of this one when we open it up, but let's just see how we go. I will point out as well that according to Untappd, this one is an American style barley wine, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So you can see that the head on this one, when the beer's poured, it's come out with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say light to medium beige colour. That is fading away to be a very thin foamy layer quickly, and just that ring around the edge of the glass. But it looks pretty damn nice actually. I think this beer looks good. So in terms of the colour of this one, this is interesting. I think this one's had a little bit of a longer wort boil, to be honest with you. But yeah, the colour of this beer I would say is a very dark sort of stained mahogany, dark chestnut type colour. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going toward the bottom of that head, but yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation, but as I say, a very dark beer. So remember, the colour of your beer can depend on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer can affect its colour too. I don't know if plums will play too much of a role in this one because the beer itself is pretty dark, and the plums that I saw, the pictures of the Murel plums, they actually looked pretty light, to be honest with you. But yeah, it is quite possible, especially with a kind of brown coloured beer like this. But yeah, this one, if you shine the light through it, it definitely has a little bit of an almost kind of brown glass colour to it. But yeah, in terms of what you might expect from a barley wine, this one is certainly within the realms of possibility. They can be even darker than this, I've seen, but usually it is a very dark brown colour beer, this one, but they can be a little bit brighter and more sort of coppery and things in colour too. So there are two kinds of barley wines normally. There are a few others like wheat wines and rye wines, which are similar, but they usually contain 20 or 30% wheat or rye respectively in the malt base. But when it comes to the barley wines themselves, the style originated in England, and these days of course you have English barley wine and American barley wine. The English ones for me are a little bit more kind of toasted and their fruity character is a little bit more dry, whereas the American ones are a little bit, you know, as is always the case with American stuff, it's that bit sweeter and more oily, and the fruits are just that little bit more kind of red, I guess you could say, rather than being dry sort of fruits. So yeah, I like both. I do like both styles actually, and I've had good barley wines from Põhjala before, come to think of it. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about that, so we can go on and have a little look at the aroma. The other thing you should know actually, come to my mind, is that the barley wine is basically the big brother of the original double IPA. You know, pale ale, IPA, double IPA and barley wine, these styles were related to each other through their hop to malt ratios, if you like. So yeah, anyway, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it has in store for us. That smells really good. That does smell very nice. Yeah, aroma wise, it's kind of giving you everything you'd expect of the style actually, but you can smell the plums are quite distinctive in this one. They smell quite different from other plums that I've come across before, be that from Japan or from the motherland of Scotland. But yeah, this is a really interesting smelling beer. I will say it's not the most pungent of aromas that I've had from Põhjala before, but I remember Põhjala beers aren't the most pungent beers in terms of aroma. This one is quite, you know, it's actually quite deep and has quite a little bit of complexity to it, but it smells great. I really like it. It didn't say, did it say what barrels it had been aged in? It just said a plum liquor. Oh, plum liqueur barley aged barley wine. That makes sense, right? So it's basically plum overload, this beer. I kind of misread that earlier, brain fart. But yeah, the aroma that you get out of this is great. I mean, you can smell the barrel on this one, but the barrel's not overpowering, to be honest with you. I mean, you get that smooth kind of like oaky woody character underneath. There's little bits of vanilla in there, and you can smell that plum liqueur. I don't know if that would be if that liqueur would come from France or if it would be an Estonian thing or what, but yeah, you can definitely smell the nice smooth wood, the little bit of vanilla. There's a wee bit of an almost brown, like butterscotchy thing from the wood as well, but then you've got the plum liqueur just sitting on top of that, and then you actually start to look at the beer itself. So the beer itself, for me, is very, very... The beer itself, for me, is like really, I would say, it's almost like it's got a lot of like sweet brown bread to it, almost to the point where it's cakey. So you can smell there's a little bit of like an almost cake crust on this one. Then you've got this big like brandy soaked fruity rye bread type character coming out of this one. It's really kind of like that. So yeah, you've got like, there's a little touch of nuttiness in there as well, which is interesting. But yeah, cake crust, sweet rye bread, and almost like a more, yeah, there's like a sort of wholemeal brown bread that sits above that comes across as if it's, you know, soaked in brandy or something like that. And then you start to get all the brown sugars out of this one, and the brown sugars in this beer are actually quite bright. One thing I had been thinking about with this beer, with the colour of it, was that it might have had a longer wort boil. We'll be able to tell for sure when we actually taste the thing, but with barley wines you can do a longer wort boil, which will give you the darker colour, and usually it gives you a bit more of a leathery, chewy, sticky sort of flavour. So that's one thing to look out for as well. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that leathery brown sugary note out of this one. You can smell it the more your nose adjusts to the beer, but it's not overly prominent. There's a little bit of a toasty brown sugar in there as well. Bit of treacle molasses type character to it. Sweet caramel. Yeah, the brown sugars are actually quite bright in this one, the more that you smell of it. You've got the brightness in the top of the nose, but the kind of darker, more leathery things underneath it. So, yeah, the way everything pieces together in this, the way everything pieces together in this particular beer is really, really interesting. Yeah, I like that about this one. I do like it, how it goes together. I don't know if there's much else to say about the malty side of it, to be honest with you. On the hoppy side of things then, it does have a little bit of, it does have a wee bit of green component to it. I saw this one does have a bottled on date, bottled on the 16th of the 3rd, 2023. So that we're actually drinking this beer about a year old, which is a good, a little bit over a year old, which is a good age for something like this. Because you know, if you drink a barley wine too young, it kind of, you lose some of the potential stuff that you might get out of it later. So we're drinking this one at a year old, which I think is good. But for me, I can still smell a little bit of green component in this. The barley wine, it actually has quite a lot of hop in it, but if you barrel age it, obviously a lot of the hoppy character is going to drop out. You can smell that some of that has happened here. The other thing that we need to think about with this beer as well is that it has an adjunct, a fruit adjunct in it, which is always going to suppress a bit of the green component too. But certainly with this one, I can get little touches of earthiness, a little bit of floral character, and a wee bit of grassiness in this one. So yeah, there is a wee bit of hoppy character to this beer for sure. But on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. Obviously you've got a lot of plum, dried plum, prunes as well. Prunes are just dried plums. But this plum for me actually smells a little bit more, compared to other ones. It actually comes across as being a little bit more sort of herbal and having an almost little spicy kind of thing to it. Yeah, that's really interesting actually, the way that the plum comes across here. But definitely, I'm getting a lot of datey character out of this one, sultanas, oily pear, stuff like that. But yeah, the focus is obviously the plums because it's been aged in a plum liqueur barley wine, plum liqueur barrel, and it's also, kind of, it's just also got the plum adjuncts in it as well. But yeah, you've got all these dried fruity characters like dates, prunes, sultanas, pears, stuff like that. You've got all of that going on with this one, but aroma-wise, it comes across very, very nicely. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, I think this one is going to be right up my street. As you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I love my big brown sugary beers, so I think this one will be no exception to that. Yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go. But as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma. This one is the Plum Barleywine, a 12% plum liqueur barrel-aged barley wine with Mirabelle plums from Lorraine in France, from Põhjala Pruulikoda in Tallinn in Estonia. Great brewery, and one that you should check out if you're interested in European craft beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers, or as they say in Estonia, terviseks. Ooh. That's got a very, very sweet impact. Very sweet. But it mellows out very, very nicely. Ooh. That lingers too. Ooh. Yeah, be prepared for that. This one lingers. It's almost very slightly sour in that sense, but not sour as in like a wild ale. But this one, yeah, the plum is right there as soon as you take this in. That's another nice beer, but it's definitely one that you need to kind of let your palate adjust to, I would say. And that's one of the advantages we have of doing these longer reviews, and also, you know, we can do the short review a little bit later, of course, and summarize the beer. But I'm just going to say to Põhjala, thumbs up once again. Very, very good beer. Potentially not one of their most balanced ones on first impression, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, this is good. I like this. I'm glad I picked this up because it's something a wee bit different, and that's what you want after 4,000 odd beers. And I will say on second sip, the sheer plumminess of this beer, once your palate adjusts to that, it is just, it is really, really nice. Yeah, so it's big oily, this one, but in some ways it feels quite light as well. When you barrel age something, you're always going to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get some of these infused flavours. That's quite obvious in here. But yeah, the way that this beer goes together is pretty damn good. It's big and sweet, definitely, you know, American barley wine, but it does show you a wee bit of the dryness of the English barley wine as well. And very, very smooth. I like this. I really do like how this beer pieces together. So let's break this down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll go to the middle third of the palate as we always do. So, for me, this one, I'd say it's really, I'd say the impact flavour of this one's really sweet, but then it shows you more, the sweetness stays there, but it shows you a little bit more of that dry sweetness into the aftertaste. But as I say, if you start on that middle third of your palate, this is one of the beers where the aroma really, you know, what you get from the flavour is kind of what you would expect from the aroma, let's say that. So the backbone of this beer, you can taste that lovely, smooth, woody character coming out of this one. And as you move further forward on the woody side of things, it's as you move further forward on the woody side of things, it gives you that wee bit of vanilla actually as well. Like I do get a little touch of vanilla out of that, but certainly the wood is quite minimal, and you really feel the you really do feel the kind of nice dryness in the wood as well, the further into the aftertaste that you go. But above that, you've got the plum liqueur that sits on top of the you've really got the plum liqueur that sits on top of the barrel, which is great. But yeah, the more that palate adjusts to this beer, the more I like it. It is this beer is certainly one of the sharper, fruitier, adjuncty beers that I've had in recent times. But I think it works pretty nicely. I'm sure I saw this beer a year or so ago somewhere, because when I saw it, I thought it seemed a bit familiar when I saw it in Angry Beer, and I didn't pick it up for some reason. This one might actually have come through Systembolaget, come to think of it. But yeah, I think it's really good actually. It's always nice to try some of these big barrel ones from Põhjala. So yeah, above the barrel then you've got that really sweet and quite sharp, plummy liqueur character coming out of it, but then above that you actually start to get the malty side of the beer. So yeah, you have that kind of cake crusty sort of layer coming out of it, and the first layer actually comes across as being kind of like a vanilla sponge cake almost. It's got a little bit of that vanilla sponge cakey sort of note to it, and then above that you get a little touch of a rye bready note. Then above that there's a little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character, so it's very layered in that note. And maybe within the kind of brown bready notes you start to get a wee touch of nuttiness out of this one, but then above all of that you get the brown sugars, which you would expect from the barley wine. So let's look at the brown sugary layers in this one. But that middle third of your palate is where the majority of the complexity of this beer is, I would say. So for me, the brown sugars, you have like a very slightly toasty caramelly note. You've got a very slightly toasty caramelly note forming the base of it, but then you can feel the more leathery brown sugar. I think this beer might have had a little bit of a longer barley wine, because there is an element of that kind of chewy, leathery sort of brown sugary character coming out of this one. But then above that, you do get the straight up sweet caramel, and in the dead centre of your palate, there's a bit of that kind of treacle molasses sort of thing coming on with this one, and that is of course the concentration of the alcohols, which you would expect for a beer that is 12%. Just makes sense, right? But yeah, that middle third of your palate is extremely layered. There's lots and lots of stuff going on in there. That's the kind of epicenter of the complexity of this beer for sure. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about that middle third of the palate, to be honest with you. It is just really nice how all of that goes together, and it shows you a wee bit more dryness into the aftertaste. But yeah, let's have a little look at the back third of your palate then. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at, pardon me, different intensities. So yeah, remember, sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate, darker flavours will come out further back. So yeah, for me, the back third of your palate, you've got this, the base of that back third of your palate has the woody character in there. Often in that back third of your palate you get similar flavours, just at different intensities and a wee bit more dryness. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward, drier flavours come out further back. So the woody character in the base is certainly a little bit drier. The plum liqueur-y notes are a little bit drier as well. And then above that, you have, you definitely have more of that kind of vanilla spongy type quality in there. Then you've got the kind of rye bread and the brown bread, and those actually feel as if they're kind of brandy soaked on the back third of the palate. There is a little bit of that kind of residual sweetness to them, but then above all of that you get some of the drier and more oily aspects of the brown sugar just creeping over the top. So yeah, that's really nice with this particular beer as well. So yeah, the I would say the yeasty side of the beer that sits on top of that's quite interesting too. The yeast, for me, it's like a dense kind of wholemeal brown bready character at the centre, and a bit of a slightly sweeter brown bread around it, and then a more crusty brown bread, and all of that yeasty character just sits on top of that back third of your tongue. So definitely you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, more yeasty and kind of lighter bready character on the back third of your palate there, which is very, very nice. But yeah, on the the fruity side of things, on the hoppy side of things with this beer then, it's I would say it's quite nice. You do still get a little bit of that residual hoppy character, but you can feel that the hops have dropped out of this one a wee bit, which is to be expected after a year in the bottle or whatever, and however long it was barrel aged. So about 2 years ago, the hops have been added into this one at this point. But yeah, certainly in the back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push further forward, you've got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity coming out of this one. But then round the front curve of the tongue, you can feel a little bit of a lighter grassy note there as well. But as I say, a lot of the green component has just kind of dropped out of this one. You can feel that with it. But you can feel the plum. You can feel the plum adjunct in this one suppressing a little bit of the grassiness and the floral character in particular. You do get hoppy dryness on the back corners and sides of your palate there too. But yeah, I like this. It does go together well. So again, thumbs up to Põhjala. Let's focus on the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of the beer. So for me, the fruity side of this beer is really interesting. It has, if you go to that front third of your palate first off, you get a wee bit of bready build up between front and middle third of your palate. The kind of cakey side in the base and the more brown bready characters on top. The base is of course the wood, the plum liqueur, you know, the cakey and bready layers, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So I wouldn't be surprised if this beer is like, you know, maybe just a bit of Cascade or something like that. I would not be surprised if it's something quite simple, because on the hoppy side of things, you can feel the more oily, hoppy, fruity characters in there. There's a bit of sultana, there's a little bit of, there's a wee bit of sultana, there's a wee bit of pear, and there's a bit of a more kind of datey kind of thing. And as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, the oily bubbles giving you a wee bit more of like a black curranty type note as well. So yeah, all of that's there, but you know, the plums, the sharpness and the juiciness of the plums is kind of coating everything. So you can feel it, as I say, pushing against the grassy part of the beer, and you can also feel it just pushing down against the other oily, fruity characters of it too. So yeah, the way all of that just pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah. So yeah, the fruitiness of this though, as I say, the big thing with the fruitiness in this beer was the impact. So when you take the liquid in, it is quite sharp, but then it just mellows out really, really nicely. It is quite interesting. So I never would have thought peaches were so sharp, but obviously there are. So pears would be, not pears, plums. I never thought plums would be so sharp, actually. But you know, the plums that we have in Scotland are quite different to the ones in Lorraine or, you know, elsewhere. You know, in Japan, the plums are very oily and very smooth in their kind of sweetness, actually. But yeah, this beer has quite a lot of sharpness to those plummy characters. But as I say, I really like this. I think this is a very interesting beer, this one. But yeah, you have to be aware of this when it comes in and you've got the impact. It really is quite sharp, I would say. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time and just ponder over the flavour, but this is really, really nice. Let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, yeah, I would say that this beer is kind of, it's kind of bottom end to full bodied, top end to mid bodied. It's kind of around there. I think bottom end to full bodied is the best way to describe it. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It does have a degree of slickness to it and a bit of oiliness, but at the same time it feels kind of quite clean. And the Estonian beers, quite a few of them do have that. It must just be the water profile there. Water profile can always be very important. But yeah, this beer, in terms of its IBU, I think that's going to be very, very low, you know, 10 or something silly like that, if any. There's a wee bit of dryness in there, which you could conflate with bitterness, of course, but overall this one it's very sweet and very sharp and fruity, I would say. This is one of the sweetest beers I've had for quite a wee while, but it is a different type of sweetness. It's almost, as I say, almost a little touch tart, to be honest. But yeah, the malt base has, you've got the barrel in there, but then the malt base has a nice smoothness to it, and then a big kind of sweetness on top, which is a mix of bright sweetness and a drier sweetness too. The fruit stuff, as we've mentioned, the plums give you a bit of sharpness, but they mellow out really nicely. Then you've got the more oily, fruity characters to this one as well. But like I say, all in all, I find this to be a really, really interesting beer, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. I think this is very well done. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this beer. So this one was simply called Plum Barleywine, 12% ABV, a really, really nicely done beer from the wonderful guys at Põhjala in Noblessner, Tallinn, Estonia. Definitely worth trying this one if you want something a wee bit different, but be aware, impact flavour on this is quite something, and it's a very, very sweet beer overall. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Põhjala as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the next wee while. But try some Estonian beers. There's some great stuff there these days. Põhjala, Puhasta, Tanker, Sori, others that aren't coming into my head just now. There are some great, great breweries in Estonia that are worth checking out. Check out my social media, check out Põhjala's social media, check out some Estonian craft beers, and I'll see you again in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.